You may be seated. A voice cries out, "In the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, the rough places a plain. Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all the people shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken this." The prophet Isaiah. Prepare the way of the Lord. Make his path straight. John the Baptist. When our days become dreary, with low hovering clouds of despair, and when our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, let us remember that there is a creative force in this universe, working to pull down the gigantic mountains of evil. A power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. Martin Luther King Jr. Or, there ain't no mountain high enough. There ain't no valley low enough. There ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Marvin Gaye. Six centuries before the coming of Jesus, a prophet arose in a time that shouldn't have a prophecy. It was a terrible time for the people of God. They looked about at a world, their world in particular, that was overwrought by evil, overrun by evil. Israel itself had been decimated, Jerusalem sacked, the temple destroyed, the best and brightest of Israel captured and taken into exile in Babylon. And there they sat for 70 years with this gloating empire that said that their God told lies, that God didn't have a future for them, that this hope that they had placed in something more was not ever to be realized. And everything about them said that Babylon was right. Everything about them said that to hope for more is foolish. And yet a prophet came up and he said, "A voice is crying out in this wilderness. Bring down the mountains, bring up the valleys, make the crooked ways straight, and get a highway to our God." For him, it was literal. Ancient Babylon is in modern-day Iraq. Israel is in Israel. And if you know any geography of what separates them, there are mountains, there are valleys, there are crooked ways, there are wildernesses. The one thing there's not is a highway between the two. It wasn't only literal, it was also figurative. Who am I to listen to in this world? The voices that say that chaos is all that there ever could be, that division is all that there ever could be, that might makes right, that these empires of evil will be all that they can be, because I look about and that looks like the truth, that looks like reality, and yet a voice arises. Make straight these crooked ways. God's building a highway. Get on it. Join in. And 6 centuries later, another prophet arises, John the Baptist, and he takes this mantra to his people who exist in the land, and yet he sees are still in exile. They've departed from their belief that God is really active in this world, that the brokenness of this world is all that there could be, is what they're tempted to believe, and yet this voice cries out in their wilderness. A new highway is opening up between you and God. Now, who listens to this? It's not those who are satisfied with the way things are. It's not the guardians of the status quo. It's not those who sit in power. It's outcasts. It's people that have hit rock bottom. It's people who figure if there were a second chance, they probably aren't ever going to get it. And yet this voice cries out to them in their wilderness, a highway's being built between you and God. And the mountains of your despair are coming down. And the valleys of your distrust are going to be filled up. And your crooked way is going to be made straight. And Jesus of Nazareth, inaugurating his ministry, the very first thing he's going to do in his ministry is make a decision as he moves south from the north in Galilee. And he's going to make a decision of where he's going to start. Now, if you are the Messiah, the Son of God, you might be tempted to go like to Jerusalem and the temple and the places of power and say, move over, guys, I got it from here. I don't need you anymore. I'm taking over. That's what we would do. And yet, this one who came to us at Christmas did not account equality with God as something to be exploited. Oh boy, would we. And so he humbled himself and took this fortuitous left-hand turn. As he went down, instead of going straight to Jerusalem, he took a left turn and goes out to the river Jordan, where a voice is crying out in the literal wilderness and to the wilderness and people's souls. And he joins with this group of people who thought that they were left behind, and he builds a highway to God, being God to them, and is baptized into their story. Takes on their baptism unto himself, gets into their waters, and in doing so, the mountains come down and the valleys fill up, because there ain't no mountain high enough. There ain't no valley low enough to keep God from getting to you, babe. And here we sit 2,000 years later, the baptized community, the people who have been invited into this story of getting into the waters of Christ together, of carrying forth this mantra that we are people who look at our world and we will not despair. We watch the TV with our eyes wide open and we see everything that's happening on the news, and yet we will not say that is going to win the day. We will be like those prophets of old, those prophets of not long ago, like Martin Luther King Jr., who had every reason to believe that these mountains that separated his people from the justice they deserved, that they were told would be forever there, separating them, these valleys that were intentionally placed between them and who they were called to be in God. He saw that they were going to come down and fill up, and a highway was going to be built. And we're baptized into that story. That's us. That's who we are. That's why we gather here. This is why we do this thing called church. And if you've never figured it out, that's why this place is here. That's why you're here. That's why Charlotte is about to be brought into the story. She's going to have great photos. Look how beautiful that is. With her family, they're probably going to go have a wonderful lunch. It's going to be a great family day. But it's more than a family day. It's the Family of God Day. And the Family of God Day has mission to do in this world. And we are baptized into that storyline and participate in mountains coming down and valleys filling up. I've been here 5.5 years. When I first came here, I'll be honest, it took me a little bit of time to figure out why I was here. Why was I particularly called to this place? It's true. I had built a church. I was asked to do that right out of seminary. I'd kind of helped turn around a church. Those missions were obvious to me. And when I came here, you look around and look at this place. This place has everything. I worshiped in a funeral home. Look at this. You think it has everything. All these ministries and everything. I was like, where do we even get the oxygen in the room to do anything new? And little by little, we've done a lot of transformative ministry here, and a lot of that has been getting the right people in the right positions or leaving them in the right positions and setting them loose to do what God's called them to do, and I've had the good sense, I hope, to do that. And yet, what I started noticing, and I think it came when we hit our 125th year, and I was made aware of that, is this legacy of coming to work each day and being in my office up there and saying once again, what is going on down there? I mean, there would be music. Oh, well, that's where TAP is having, the dance party for the adults with developmental disabilities. That's happening down there. Didn't know that was going to happen. Why is the school bus every day coming here and bringing in all that? Why can I never find a parking place in this church? Oh, because there's people always coming through here. This is just a hub of ministry. And all of a sudden, what I realized was this what about I was building? It was about what people in faithfulness built and were perpetuating. That they were the community. You are the community of the baptized. And this place that I've been honored to be a part of and to help push towards the future is a community that looks at the world and will not despair. Who looks at mountains and says, they ain't high enough. And valleys, they're not low enough. We're going to be people who build a highway between those that need God and the God who wants them home. This is who we are baptized into. And Charlotte, I invite you therefore to bring your family forward and be baptized into this story of God.